featured quite prominently in all our discussions. We also talked about how we can use the ASEAN framework to tackle some of the most pressing challenges our world faces, namely those brought by a changing climate and facing new security threats. Canada finds itself in a unique position to support and advance ASEAN's progressive agenda as a dialogue partner of ASEAN. Over the past couple of days, I also expressed Canada's desire to join in the East Asia Summit and the ASEAN Defence Ministers meeting plus at the earliest opportunity. For the past 40 years, the ASEAN-Canada dialogue has led to not only a strong partnership, but a close friendship between all parties involved. I believe that membership to these bodies will help ensure our success for the next 40 years. This trip to Manila was also an opportunity to strengthen the people-to-people ties between Canada and the Philippines. The Philippines is Canada's largest source of immigrants. Indeed, Tagalog is spoken from coast to coast to coast. And in many ways, our two countries continue to grow closer every day. Un bon nombre d'entrepreneurs canadiens et philippins choisissent d'étendre leurs activités de leur entreprise dans un pays ou l'autre. Je pourrais vous donner l'exemple de Jollibee, que j'ai visité ici à Manille et qui est également établi au Canada. Certains d'entre vous se rappelleront peut-être que je m'étais arrêté au restaurant Jollibee de Winnipeg il n'y a pas si longtemps. Si l'on resserre les liens entre les Philippins et les Canadiens, les gens qui travaillent fort auront encore plus d'occasions de faire leur marque dans un monde de plus en plus mondialisé. C'est l'un des messages que je retiens de ma rencontre avec ces dirigeantes d'entreprises philippines inspirantes. There are countless examples of Canadian and Filipino entrepreneurs who choose to grow their business in one country or the other. You see companies like Jollibee, which I visited here in Manila, expanding their operations in Canada. Some of you may remember that I stopped by a Jollibee in Winnipeg not too long ago. Closer ties between Filipinos and Canadians mean more opportunities for hardworking people to get ahead in an increasingly globalized world. This is something that was echoed yesterday when I met with inspiring Filipino and women business leaders. Another important part of our efforts to strengthen our relationship with the Philippines is development assistance. In times of need, Canadians are not only willing but ready to lend a hand to those who need it most. During my visit, I had the opportunity to visit the Lican Center for Women's Health, which aims to provide quality health services and family planning. The Lican Center has been working in partnership with Interpares, a Canadian NGO, as part of their Innovations to Reduce Maternal Deaths project. With the support of the Interpares and the Canadian government, 3 new clinics in and around Manila have so far been set up as a result of the initiative, clinics that provide invaluable support to mothers and their newborns. This is very much in line with Canada's feminist international assistance policy, as we expect the project is expected to benefit 16,000 women and 6,400 children in the region. Additionally, I am pleased to announce that Canada will be investing $17.8 million over 5 years through the Sexual Health and Empowerment Project, which will be implemented by Oxfam. This funding will help improve access to sexual and reproductive health and rights services for more than 85,000 women and girls living in poor and remote regions in the country. Only with the full participation of all citizens can countries reach their full potentials. When we invest in women and girls, we help entire families, communities, and societies succeed. Overall, I'm very pleased with what we've been able to accomplish during this trip for Canada and for Canadians. Once again, thank you for joining us. I look forward to taking your questions now.
From CBC, why do you feel Canada should join the East Asia Summit?
ASEAN represents about 640 million people. That's a group of citizens twice as large, almost twice as much as the United States. So it's a tremendous economic opportunity for Canadians to engage in an extremely fast-growing region where we already have very good, very positive ties. If you group together the ASEAN nations, it actually would make Canada's 6th largest trading partner. So we're already very engaged with ASEAN, and being able to be full members of the East Asia Summit will allow us to continue to promote issues around security, economy, people-to-people ties that really, really matter. Again, this is about creating opportunities for Canadians, for Canadian businesses, for Canadian NGOs to engage more constructively and productively with over 640 million people in the ASEAN economies.
Specifically though, what is it about the East Asia Summit and the Defence Ministers Plus that is alluring to Canada?
We have been members of APEC for many years, and that has been a premier opportunity to discuss economic collaboration around the Pacific region. But there is more than just economics to discuss, and the East Asia Summit has become the central place for discussing around Pacific issues. Canada is a Pacific country, as you well know, and being able to engage on broader issues of security, of development, of human rights, of economic opportunity, broader than just the APEC group, is very much in line with how Canada wants to and should engage constructively with the region and indeed with the world. Canada is deeply committed to multilateral institutions and fora, and the East Asia Summit is an important one in an extremely compelling and growing region of the world. Le groupe d'ANAS représente 640 millions de personnes et comme on sait, ça c'est presque le double de la population des États-Unis. Ça représente, si on regroupe les pays ensemble, notre 6e partenaire économique dans le monde et on devrait en faire davantage. De pouvoir être engagé dans le sommet de l'Asie de l'Est, ça nous donnerait l'opportunité d'être présents pas seulement sur des discussions économiques qu'on a à l'APEC, mais sur des discussions de sécurité, de droits humains, de développement, d'opportunités pour nos citoyens dans une région qui est d'une croissance extrêmement rapide. On voit l'importance de diversifier, d'être engagé de façon positive et productive dans le monde et la présence du Canada au sein du sommet de l'Asie de l'Est, au sein de l'ANAS, représente une vraie opportunité pour le Canada et pour les Canadiens.
JP Tasker, CBC News. Did you raise the issue of human rights and the extrajudicial killings with President Duterte while you were here in the Philippines, and if not, why?
I actually had an opportunity to have a conversation with President Duterte just before our meeting earlier this morning, the larger meeting earlier this morning, in which I emphasized, of course, the people-to-people ties between Canada and the Philippines and the great connections there. But I also mentioned human rights, the rule of law, and specifically extrajudicial killings as being an issue that Canada is concerned with. We also discussed the garbage issue, which I know has been a long-standing irritant, and I committed to him, as I'm happy to commit to you all now, that Canada is very much engaged in finding a solution on that. Okay. Oui, j'ai eu la chance d'échanger directement avec le président Duterte, où j'ai parlé évidemment des liens personne à personne très profonds entre le Canada et les Philippines, mais j'ai aussi soulevé des enjeux plus difficiles, notamment les droits humains, la règle du droit et aussi la question des meurtres en dehors de l'encadrement du système judiciaire. C'est un enjeu qui est préoccupant pour les Canadiens et il fallait absolument que je le souligne directement avec le président. On a aussi parlé d'un enjeu par rapport à des déchets canadiens qui sont ici à Manille et on travaille ensemble pour régler la situation.
And what was the president's reaction when you raised the issue of human rights? Was he receptive to your message?
Canada has earned a reputation for being able to have strong and sometimes frank, always frank, sometimes firm discussions around rule of law and human rights with partners around the world. It's very much what people expect of Canada, and it comes as no surprise when we do bring it up. This is something that is important to Canadians and it's important to the world, and I will always bring that up. The President was receptive to my comments, and it was throughout a very cordial and positive exchange. Okay. Les gens autour du monde s'attendent à ce que le Canada parle de droits humains, parle de nos valeurs. Alors, c'est jamais une surprise quand le Premier ministre canadien parle d'enjeux des fois difficiles. Ça fait partie de nos valeurs, mais ce qui fait aussi partie de nos valeurs, c'est de le faire de façon ferme mais respectueuse. Et le président a été très réceptif à mes commentaires.
Bonjour M. Trudeau, Philippe Vincent Fozy de Radio-Canada. Demain, on va parler de mission de paix. Je ne vous demande pas de dire ce que vous allez annoncer demain. Et j'aimerais ça, juste que vous soyez capable d'expliquer aux Canadiens comment, avec 600 soldats, 150 policiers, alors qu'il y en a 110 000 casques bleus déployés dans le monde, on peut être efficace comme pays et avoir un impact?
Voilà la question. C'est au cœur des réflexions que le Canada a depuis bien des mois déjà, depuis qu'on s'est engagé à présenter jusqu'à 600 soldats et un demi-milliard de dollars aux opérations de la paix onusienne. Comment, quand on parle de presque 100 000 casques bleus autour du monde, est-ce que jusqu'à 600 soldats canadiens peuvent avoir un impact significatif quand on voit l'ampleur des défis et des problèmes qu'on a autour du monde? Mais on sait quand même, et on sait très bien, que les Canadiens s'attendent à ce que le Canada joue un rôle significatif et positif dans le monde. Et le monde et l'ONU ont besoin du Canada d'apporter ses capacités, son expertise pour faire une différence. C'est la réflexion qu'on a depuis plusieurs mois. Et je sais que tout le monde va être très heureux de voir la solution tout à fait à l'image de nos valeurs et de notre approche que nous allons présenter demain. The question around United Nations peacekeeping, the commitment that Canada has made for up to $500 million and 600 peacekeepers around the world. The question that is naturally posed is, how can those 600 Canadian troops and police officers make a difference in a world where there are close to 100,000 peacekeeping troops active at any given time? How can Canada best help? Because make no mistake, Canadians expect Canada to have a strong and positive contribution that makes a real difference, and the world expects Canada to make a significant contribution that makes a difference. So the question of how to do that with a commitment of 600 personnel is one that has occupied us over the past months. And I'm very pleased to say that what we will be announcing tomorrow in Vancouver at the UN Peacekeeping Summit is fully in line not just with Canadian values and Canadians' desire to see our country having maximal positive impact around the world, but fully in line with what the UN and indeed the world has expressed its need and interest in.
Mais en même temps, M. Trudeau, à l'ONU, on le sait, il y a des gens qui sont fâchés par la proposition qui a été faite. Le secrétaire général de l'ONU ne sera même pas là avec vous au sommet de l'ONU sur les missions de paix. Comment pouvez-vous dire que les gens vont être contents?
Nous avons travaillé avec le secrétariat de l'ONU, on a travaillé directement avec le secrétaire général avec qui j'ai eu des bons échanges hier justement sur ce sujet. Nous savons que l'ONU et nos partenaires à travers le monde vont être très réceptifs aux propositions innovatives qu'on va mettre de l'avant demain, qui vont démontrer que le Canada, qui était à l'origine avec Lester Pearson de la création des casques bleus, est encore une fois en train de créer et de développer des façons de maintenir et assurer la paix dans le monde à l'image de nos valeurs et de notre histoire. I've had a number of conversations, including with the Secretary General of the United Nations yesterday, about our engagement around peacekeeping. I know that the announcement we're making tomorrow will be extremely well received by the UN, by our partners who have long been waiting to see Canada once again step up in the way we did all those years ago when Lester Pearson contributed to the creation of the UN peacekeeping force around the Suez Canal crisis. Much is expected of Canada in how we create effective peacekeeping in the 21st century when we know the nature of conflicts, the nature of insurgency has changed radically. How can we make sure that we are best helping around the world and that we are using our abilities and expertise to ensure maximal positive impact, not just for Canadian contributions, but for all peacekeepers, is at the center of the announcement we'll be making tomorrow.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Kevin Gallagher with CTV News. I'm following up on a story my colleague Mercedes Stevenson did. There are concerns that a new policy will take allowances from injured special forces and troops after 180 days that could lead them to hide their injuries, including post-traumatic stress disorder. So there's a concern now, isn't that counters to some of the messages from your government, especially on mental health and well-being of our troops?
We, as a government, owe unimaginable amounts to the men and women who have served their country in our armed forces and put their lives and their families' livelihood in many cases at risk in service of their country. Our government over the past 2 years has made significant steps in improving service and care for veterans, support for their families, support not just physical but mental as well. We know that there is always much more to do. Our Minister of Defense and our Minister of Veterans Affairs take very, very seriously the responsibility to ensure that the sacred obligation we have towards those who serve our country is fully met. And I know that both the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Veterans Affairs are looking into this issue to ensure that, in fact, we are giving proper care, mental and physical, to all of our soldiers and veterans.
But will your government reconsider this policy that takes away allowances after 180 days of being injured or ill?
As I've said, the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Veterans Affairs are looking very, very seriously at this issue to ensure that everyone gets the right duty of care. We know that there has been much we have had to do over the past 2 years since we formed government to improve the care the veterans are getting after 10 years of less of the care that they actually needed. And one of the things we're moving forward in a thoughtful, careful way is around ensuring that there are no unintended negative consequences like apparently might be happening in this situation, which is something we take very seriously because our values and our actions are entirely lined up with our responsibility to care for and support those who have served our country.
Andy Blatchford, Canadian Press. Mr. Prime Minister, how does Canada saying it can develop oil sustainably because the world isn't going to wean itself off oil overnight any different from the US saying that finding ways to burn coal more cleanly is better when the world isn't weaning off coal anytime soon?
Let me be very blunt about this. Coal represents perhaps the greatest challenge to Canada or to the world not meeting its climate change targets. Unless we reduce coal consumption, we are not going to be able to create catastrophic global warming. Canada has taken significant steps in phasing out coal. We will continue to ensure that is successful. We are investing in renewables. We're moving beyond it. But we know that the atmosphere doesn't care where carbon is emitted. It all impacts on all of us. So we are committed to working with our international partners, with our friends and allies, to reduce coal consumption, to reduce emissions related to coal, and to find alternatives that are less polluting. This is something that matters deeply, and it's why Canada has made a commitment of $2.65 billion on international development assistance specifically to fight climate change and to get countries and communities to reduce their dependence on fossil fuels, particularly coal, and move towards cleaner sources of energy.
How is this any different than oil?
We know that there is a continuum in terms of emissions. Coal is the dirtiest, oil is next, and then natural gas has the lowest emissions profile of the fossil fuels. We need to reduce fossil fuels in general to move towards a low-carbon economy. We need to ensure we are creating much greater energy efficiencies while at the same time ensuring the way we are extracting and processing and using these fuels has the minimal impact on the environment. It's hardest to do with coal, but we recognize that there is much to do in improving our efficiencies and our cleanliness or the lowering of emissions around all fossil fuels. Nous savons que le charbon est responsable pour les plus grands défis au niveau des changements climatiques et nous devons réduire et éventuellement éliminer l'utilisation du charbon comme source d'énergie. Le Canada a déjà mené la charge en éliminant les centrales du charbon dans les prochaines années. Nous allons continuer de le faire, mais nous savons aussi que nous devons d'être engagés autour du monde pour développer des solutions qui démontrent qu'il y a d'autres alternatives au charbon. Des différents carburants fossiles, c'est évidemment le charbon qui est le plus émetteur. Ensuite, c'est le pétrole et le mieux des carburants fossiles, c'est le gaz naturel qui en émet le moins. Mais ça représente quand même des défis où on doit augmenter notre efficacité énergétique et nous devons aussi améliorer notre façon de rendre ça plus propre pour pouvoir atteindre nos cibles pour empêcher des changements de climat catastrophiques.
Prime Minister, Mike Lecouteur with Global National. I'd ask you to answer in English and French to this question, please. More than a year ago, after the execution of Robert Hall in this country, a statement from your office said that you would be working with the Philippine government and other international partners to, quote, bring Hall's killers to justice. What are you doing to make that happen?
We have actually mentioned the collaboration with the Philippines when I had an exchange with President Duterte earlier today. We continue to be part of international efforts to fight against international terrorism, to reduce the use of hostage-taking as a fundraising mechanism for terrorist groups and cells, and we continue to work to ensure that there are consequences for anyone who is engaged in terrorist hostage-taking. We have been advised by the Philippines, that most of the people engaged in the kidnapping of the two Canadians have been killed in military operations. But we continue to work with the Philippines to ensure that everyone associated with that is brought to justice. Le Canada continue d'être engagé avec une coalition de partenaires et alliés dans la lutte contre le terrorisme international. Nous allons continuer de travailler avec les Philippines pour s'assurer que tous ceux qui sont responsables de la prise en otage de Canadiens, des deux Canadiens il y a 2 ans, soient amenés en justice ou qu'il y ait des conséquences. Les Philippines nous ont avisé que les membres de Abu Sayyaf qui étaient responsables de cette prise en otage de Canadiens ont été tués, mais nous continuons de travailler avec les services policiers et d'information des Philippines pour s'assurer que tout le monde sache que ce n'est jamais dans leur intérêt de prendre en otage des Canadiens ni quiconque autre pour lever des fonds pour le terrorisme.
Members of the victims' family are actually calling on the government to create this new action plan that would, among other things, provide better communication with the families, also a specialized group that could come on the ground and help. Is your government willing to commit to that?
We have been very much engaged both with the families and with other experts from around the world on how to best move forward in situations that unfortunately do come up more and more often, where there are terrorist ransom takings. As you all know, Canada has taken a very, very strong line, and that we will never pay ransoms to terrorist groups. That is something that both creates funding for these terrorist groups to go and create more violence, but it also puts at risk the millions of Canadians who live, work, and travel every day around the world as potential sources of revenue for terrorist groups. So we stand firmly on that. But obviously through the experiences that we've had, tragic experiences we've had, we continue to look for ways to be more effective and provide better support to families who are in these tragic and horrific circumstances.
Good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister. I'm Willard Cheng from ABS-CBN Manila. I would just like to follow up on the issue of the trash that was shipped from Canada to the Philippines. You mentioned that you are committed to finding a solution, but what specific steps is Canada taking to address the matter? And how soon can we see action, especially since you had also told us in a press conference here in 2015 that a Canadian solution was already being developed? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. This is something that has its root in private businesses signing contracts and having specific disputes. But Canada is, of course, very open to working with the government of the Philippines to resolve this question. One of the early barriers that I was talking about when I was here 2 years ago that represented a challenge is that Canadian legal regulations prevented us from being able to receive the waste back in Canada. Even though it originally came from Canada, we had legal barriers and restrictions that prevented us from being able to take it back. Those regulations and those impediments have now been addressed, so it is now theoretically possible to get it back, but there's still a number of questions around who will pay for it, where the financial responsibility is, where the consequences are, as this was at its origin a commercial transaction that did not involve governments. But I expressed to President Duterte and have the assurance of my officials both here in the Philippines and back in Canada that we will continue to work on this and hopefully resolve this situation.
Last question.
Hang on, I'll just answer that one in French. Aux origines du défi au niveau des déchets qui sont ici aux Philippines d'origine canadienne, c'est un enjeu entre deux compagnies, ou une compagnie privée, et donc ça n'impliquait pas dès l'origine les gouvernements. Mais quand il est maintenant question de rapatrier ces déchets au Canada, on s'est rendu compte qu'il y a des blocages légaux qui empêchaient le Canada de reprendre ou d'accepter de reprendre ses propres déchets une fois qu'il s'était rendu outre-mer. Nous avons trouvé des façons de permettre, au moins théoriquement, de reprendre ces déchets, mais là, il y a une question de comment ça va se faire et à qui la responsabilité de payer pour ça. Comme c'était une affaire de corporation privée, le gouvernement n'a pas la responsabilité directe, mais nous, comme je l'ai dit au président Duterte, nous prenons très au sérieux notre responsabilité de contribuer à une solution et nous travaillons ensemble là-dessus.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. I'm Ayim Karaig from Agence France Presse. You mentioned you raised the issue of extrajudicial killings with President Duterte. Could you tell us what actions is Canada calling on the Philippines to do to address these allegations? And secondly, human rights groups have expressed concern about the declining state of human rights in Southeast Asia, from the Rohingya crisis in Myanmar, the crackdown on civil rights in Cambodia and Vietnam, to the allegations of killings in the drug war. Do you think the issue of human rights should be discussed at length and in depth more in ASEAN? Thank you.
Canada is a country that always brings up human rights issues and strongly engages in line with our values everywhere around the world. Countries around the world have learned to accept that and expect it even of Canada, even as we engage constructively on other ways in economics and trade in benefits for our peoples. Countries around the world know that when you engage with Canada, you will hear about human rights concerns. And we are the first to mention that we are not perfect either. That Indigenous peoples in Canada have suffered neglect, marginalization, and mistreatment for decades, if not centuries, indeed centuries. So we know that talking about human rights is an essential part of a path forward. It has to be done in an honest and frank way, but it has to be done. We have to talk about the high expectations we must have to protect life, to uphold the rule of law and human rights. We know that there is always more work to do, and Canada inevitably offers support and help, both through our own experiences and where we have failed and where we have succeeded, but also in our institutions, whether it's our justice system, whether it's around policing, whether it's around governance. These are things that Canada can sometimes share best practices and help countries move along in a way that creates opportunity, security, stability for all its citizens. I had extended conversation with the State Councillor of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, about the plight of the Muslim refugees in Rakhine State. This is of tremendous concern to Canada and many, many other countries around the world. And again, we're always looking at not how we can sort of shake our finger and yell at people, but how we can help, how we can move forward in a way that reduces violence, that emphasizes the rule of law, and that ensures protection for all citizens. As I mentioned to President Duterte, we're concerned with human rights, with the extrajudicial killings, impressed upon him the need for respect for the rule of law, and as always, offered Canada's support and help as a friend to help move forward on what is a real challenge. This is the way we engage with the world. This is the way we always will.
En français, mais juste sur la dernière partie, là, sur le président des Philippines.
Ce que j'ai dit au président des Philippines, c'est que je suis préoccupé, évidemment, par les droits humains, par la situation de meurtre extrajudiciaire, mais nous allons évidemment travailler avec les Philippines s'ils veulent et s'ils ont besoin de notre appui, comme on le fait partout dans le monde. Nous avions nos propres expériences au niveau des droits humains qu'on a encore à travailler. Il n'y a personne qui est parfait là-dedans. Et je lui ai, comme il le sait, proposé d'être là s'ils ont besoin de nous ou s'ils veulent de nous. C'est le rôle que le Canada joue partout dans le monde. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. What a pleasure to see you all. What a pleasure to be back here in the Philippines. Thank you very much, everyone.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau there talking to members of the media, both local and international media at the Media Center, the World Trade Center in Pasay City. The Prime Minister being asked on local issues such as, number one, did he ask President Rodrigo Duterte about the issue on human rights, to which the Prime Minister said he mentioned and brought up the issue of human rights and EJK and the rule of law, saying that Canada is concerned about this. And when asked what the reaction of President Duterte was, the Canadian Prime Minister said President Duterte was receptive to his comments and that there was a cordial exchange and discussion about this. Also, another issue plaguing at least one of the topics raised during the press briefing was the garbage issue, to which the Prime Minister admitted that this has become an irritant and that Canada is engaged in finding a solution to this problem. He went on to say that the challenge was that at some point, at least in the past years, Canada was prevented to take back this garbage here in the Philippines now. But apparently that has been addressed. But the question now is who will pay for this? Apparently it's a commercial transaction that did not involve the government of Canada, but said they are committed to finding a solution to this problem. Also, other questions on the peacekeepers that Canada has committed, about 600 of them around the world. He said that he had a conversation with Secretary General of the UN on peacekeeping, and there will be an announcement tomorrow in Vancouver. Also, the Prime Minister talking about reducing coal consumption in Canada, saying that they are committed to reducing coal emissions. They are investing on renewable energy, and also a statement made on the killing of Robert Hall, who was kidnapped and killed by the Abu Sayyaf group here in 2015. Prime Minister Trudeau saying they continue to fight against terrorism and they are part of international efforts also to fight terrorism. Again, the Canadian Prime Minister there allowing so many people to have a photograph of him at the World Trade Center in Pasay City. Just before this, of course, when he arrived last Sunday, Prime Minister Trudeau visiting a fast food chain, that's Jollibee, and also going to an NGO women's health group called Likhaan. Also met with some DOTR officials and inspected an e-jeepney. That's about it for the press briefing of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We now turn you over to CNN's Newsroom. I'm Pinky Webb. Good afternoon.
ASEAN's beginnings show that it was on August 8, 1967, when the 5 founding fathers of ASEAN signed the Bangkok Declaration. They were Adam Malik of Indonesia, Narciso Ramos of the Philippines, Tun Abdul Razak of Malaysia, Rajaratnam of Singapore, and Thanat Koman of Thailand. They came together at a time of great upheaval, just like today. Thailand was at that moment brokering a reconciliation among Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Vietnam was embattled, and Narciso Ramos' son, Fidel, who would eventually become Philippine president, was then serving in Vietnam with the Philippine Civic Action Group. Indonesia was on the verge of political and economic chaos. In his speech, Mr. Ramos spoke of the uncertainty creeping across the region during those dark times. He said, "It almost taxed the goodwill, imagination, and patience of the 5 founding fathers. Each of them, after all, had political and historical perspectives that were very different from each other. And yet, they broke through those barriers. Several accounts of those events show that they deliberately came together in what they called sport shirt diplomacy, an informal way of reaching consensus while playing golf and teasing each other about their game. Our ability to reach friendly consensus informally is now symbolized by the customary handshake among ASEAN leaders during each annual ministerial meetings. During these extraordinary times, when the politics of rage and anger define internal and external relations, the ability of ASEAN's leaders to talk through differences with not a single country claiming hegemony over others is a remarkable feat. It is a testament that discourse trumps military action, that words are better than nuclear warheads and naval might, that we can agree despite our huge adversity. ASEAN's handshake gives hope to a divided and confused world. Having said that, I am sure it is also apparent to all of us that it is time to go beyond words. Whatever we achieve on the negotiating table must be felt by those who have been left behind by globalization and progress. For each action point that we reach by consensus, lives must be changed. The metrics for our success must be better lives, not just well-written documents. Meaningful transformation is the only way for us to douse the anger that the poor and the marginalized are shouting out for all the world to hear. For a long time, we have depended on the invisible hand of Adam Smith's free market economy to determine which businesses, which services, which nation's economy grew or shrunk. When we noticed that some industries or sectors needed help in accessing these free markets, we depended on government to do the job. This has changed due to the urgency of fixing global inequality. The problem of inclusivity is everyone's job now, because inequality has turned the world's poor into angry customers. Technology has given them a voice, and the internet has taught them to use the power granted by democratic and political institutions. Connectivity has made it easy to stage revolutions, and now the world is realizing that they are a force to reckon with. It has increasingly become apparent that we must do things right by them if we are to keep our world from breaking apart. Hence, the ASEAN's decision to put prosperity for all at the center of all our conversations is timely and critical at this point. For too long, the world has treated micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises with casual concern. Their small economic footprint keeping them in the little boy's room, unable to participate in global discussions. But if we are to solve inequality, we must ensure that MSMEs benefit from unclogged value chains, fair trade, and peace. Creating more inclusive and sustainable economies is imperative if we wish to prevent the rise of terrorism and extremism in our region. Our country's recent crisis in Marawi City in the province of Lanao del Sur, a city in the southern part of our country, reminds us that desperation provides terrorists fertile ground for recruitment of our youth. Many of them have wider access to social media and are vulnerable to manipulative propaganda that sow hate and anger. We need to give our restless youth broader opportunities to take them away from that path. As technology creates faster means of sending information to a content-hungry generation, the faster it will be to influence them to either do good or bad. As we rebuild Marawi and encourage trust among the people that settle and do business there, we see the value of a whole-of-nation approach and eventually a whole-of-region approach. While our heroic security forces have managed to neutralize the enemies, they will be the first ones to recognize the role of other stakeholders in the tremendous challenge of rebuilding. Beyond information sharing among our security officials, the more lasting solution to diminish the influence of extremists will be opportunities for gainful jobs and livelihood. This vision and its calcification into reality will have a massive impact on how our economies and our societies will grow moving forward. That is because research has shown that countries may experience economic growth from the rise of extractive industries and uneven opportunities, but not for long. Weaknesses in political and economic institutions that perpetuate the concentration of wealth and power among the few hurt everyone in the end. Wealth does not lead to sustainable prosperity if it is not shared by all. Within this backdrop, technology is a wild card we must all learn to decode, rich and poor countries alike. It is redefining our economies and changing the future of work. The sharing economy is upending what seems to be a tried and tested business models. Imagine that today, with a cozy villa near the ocean, can rival the best hotels in the area just by listing their property on Airbnb and other similar websites. Ride-hailing apps are lowering costs and improving access to transportation. From the lens of inclusivity, this is a great thing. Technology is making it easy for ordinary people to reach markets. But policymakers are grappling with new things: safety of consumers, legal liabilities, and ensuring that quality of service meets industry standards, among other things. New developments, new problems. Artificial intelligence will make a lot of jobs obsolete. Are they tools for inclusivity or enemies? The world's thought leaders are still divided. What we do know is that in the next 5 to 10 years, our people will have to compete with machines, not just each other's pool of talent and workers. And some say this may cause civil unrest. The roadmap to inclusivity will have to look at artificial intelligence and machines' growing ability for deep learning. And hopefully, we will arrive at answers together. We'll have to look at retooling and retaining our people so that their skills will not be at risk of automation. We will need to rewire our education systems to inculcate critical thinking skills and creativity among our youth, skills that cannot be matched by machines. It would be best if we can do this together in ASEAN. so we can do things faster and better. In a region criticized to have more trade than the West, than with each other, it would be a terrible tragedy if we are manipulated in the end by machines. Pursuing fair trade within and outside of ASEAN in a tariff-free world is also a developing challenge. The vision for a single market is clear. People, goods, and services must be allowed to move freely across our borders. This should benefit our MSMEs most of all, because big companies can pierce other markets more easily, even when tariffs are up due to their size and resources. But while tariffs have gone down, non-trade measures and non-trade barriers are making it difficult for businesses to cross borders. In the quest for inclusivity, I am happy to note that the private sector, not just governments, are providing solutions through inclusive business models. Many of you here are responding to the call of the times by opening up your value chains to smallholders, micro and small businesses. You spend your resources and time to improve their processes and their products. You are empowering many of those who have previously been left behind by progress and globalization. Farmers, fisherfolk, women, and even indigenous peoples. Truly, the power of the entrepreneurial spirit can move our world. Hopefully, all of these efforts will greatly improve your businesses as well. The best thing that each of you businessmen, investors, and policymakers can do for the poor is to create a moat of responsible sustainability around your businesses. This way, you keep your employees employed, and those who benefit from your goods and services stay happy. As you do better, we all do better. ASEAN is the 6th largest economy in the world, with a combined gross domestic product of $2.55 trillion. From $122 GDP per capita in 1967, our people's standard of living has risen to $4,021 per capita as of 2016. Asia is now leading global growth, delivering 60% of it. Our growing demographic of over 600 million people are the world's happiest consumers. But the best is yet to come. This is the age of Asia. Let the dragons and the tigers claim this century, and in the process, show the world how it is possible for our economies to grow wealth and spread it equitably. In the last 3 days, we have all heard much from great speakers and panelists about ASEAN's roadmap towards prosperity for all. May we all translate them to action, push through barriers, and improve lives on the ground. May the heavens bless all your efforts. Thank you very much. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much, Vice President Leni Robredo.
And that was Vice President Leni Robredo there addressing the closing of the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit. The Vice President talks about the common challenges facing the ASEAN member countries, such as security threats and disruptive technologies, giving a brief look back as well at the history of ASEAN and how the founding fathers were able to unite so many years ago. Now, she admonishes that just as then, again, dialogue must trump war and weapons, and even nuclear weapons. She says inclusivity is everyone's job, as technology has given everyone a bigger voice, and the ASEAN's goal of prosperity for all is timely and critical, as this is a way to discourage extremism and rebellion. Now, Vice President Robredo adds policymakers must also learn to harness new technologies to give the youth new opportunities and broader opportunities, to give them better skills, so as times evolve, they are also updated. And she also emphasizes the need for open markets, a vision for a single market that will benefit MSMEs as Asia leads global growth. Now, earlier, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau delivered his message before the media covering the ASEAN summit. Here is a portion of that speech.
Our partnership to help people get ahead, with most of our discussions focusing on trade. Unprecedented dynamic growth is currently driving Asia's importance on the world stage, which means new opportunities for Canada to do business with ASEAN nations. That said, renewed economic partnership must profit hard-working middle-class folks, not just business leaders. This is something that featured quite prominently in all our discussions. We also talked about how we can use the ASEAN framework to tackle some of the most pressing challenges our world faces, namely those brought by a changing climate and facing new security threats. Canada finds itself in a unique position to support and advance ASEAN's progressive agenda as a dialogue partner of ASEAN. Over the past couple of days, I also expressed Canada's desire to join in the East Asia Summit and the ASEAN Defence Ministers Meeting Plus at the earliest opportunity. For the past 40 years, the ASEAN-Canada dialogue has led to not only a strong partnership, but a close friendship between all parties involved. I believe that membership to these bodies will help ensure our success for the next 40 years. This trip to Manila was also an opportunity to strengthen the people-to-people ties between Canada and the Philippines. The Philippines is Canada's largest source of immigrants. Indeed, Tagalog is spoken from coast to coast to coast. And in many ways, our two countries continue to grow closer every day. Un bon nombre d'entrepreneurs canadiens et philippins choisissent d'étendre leurs activités de leur entreprise dans un pays ou l'autre. Je pourrais vous donner l'exemple de Jollibee, que j'ai visité ici à Manille et qui est également établi au Canada. Certains d'entre vous se rappelleront peut-être que je m'étais arrêté au restaurant Jollibee de Winnipeg il n'y a pas si longtemps. Si l'on resserre les liens entre les Philippins et les Canadiens, les gens qui travaillent fort auront encore plus d'occasions de faire leur marque dans un monde de plus en plus mondialisé. C'est l'un des messages que je retiens de ma rencontre avec ces dirigeantes d'entreprises philippines inspirantes. There are countless examples of Canadian and Filipino entrepreneurs who choose to grow their business in one country or the other. You see companies like Jollibee, which I visited here in Manila, expanding their operations in Canada. Some of you may remember that I stopped by a Jollibee in Winnipeg not too long ago. Closer ties between Filipinos and Canadians mean more opportunities for hardworking people to get ahead in an increasingly globalized world. This is something that was echoed yesterday when I met with inspiring Filipino and women business leaders. Another important part of our efforts to strengthen our relationship with the Philippines is development assistance. In times of need, Canadians are not only willing, but ready to lend a hand to those who need it most. During my visit, I had the opportunity to visit the Balitanghali Center for Women's Health, which aims to provide quality health services and family planning. The Balitanghali Center has been working in partnership with Interpares, a Canadian NGO, as part of their Innovations to Reduce Maternal Deaths project. With the support of the Interpares and the Canadian government, 3 new clinics in and around Manila have so far been set up as a result of the initiative, clinics that provide invaluable support to mothers and their newborns. This is very much in line with Canada's feminist international assistance policy, as we expect the project is expected to benefit 16,000 women and 6,400 children in the region. Additionally, I am pleased to announce that Canada will be investing $17.8 million over 5 years through the Sexual Health and Empowerment Project, which will be implemented by Oxfam. This funding will help improve access to sexual and reproductive health and rights services for more than 85,000 women and girls living in poor and remote regions in the country. Only with the full participation of all citizens can countries reach their full potentials. When we invest in women and girls, we help entire families, communities, and societies succeed. Overall, I'm very pleased with what we've been able to accomplish during this trip for Canada and for Canadians. Once again, thank you for joining us.
And that was Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau right there. We'll give you more updates on the ASEAN